We're going to record. So we are recording. So especially for the Europeans, be careful. Keep us out of GDPR trouble. So we'll start with this. I'll come back to it in case you were thinking, now that I've seen it again, we'd love to have more donations come into this. So the crossover event, you don't have to have coding experience, or if you do, we've got a digital analytics data set. They're open. Their R-rated events are open to all genders. It is just women, non-binary, who are the only ones who will actually present. But I've gone to several of them. But this one is specifically trying to kind of do some kind of the basics and looking at digital analytics data. So you can follow along with your computer. And that will be next month. And we will have the registration open as soon as we kind of finalize a couple little details. So the way this is going to work is I will stop talking at some point, actually shortly after this slide. We will then have the main presentation, the main event with Mai. And then we will have a little bit of Q&A. From the Q&A, we will, anybody who wants to stick around, we've got a good big crowd coming in. So we will split up, or we'll do some door prizes. So we've got little drawings and a little mechanism to do some cool door prizes in light of this being virtual. We can't give away our t-shirts in person. Then we'll do a breakout room. This says number one. We're probably only going to do number one, but basically you will get randomly assigned to a breakout room, which is a Zoom feature with 4 or 5 or 6 people, just to kind of hang out for like 10 minutes and chat. So it's not just watching a screen like a webinar. And then we'll come back into the main room and we'll kind of do a little bit of a wrap up. And if things are going gangbusters, maybe we'll do a second breakout. So with that, we will be, Mai's got her second screen up, so she's going to keep an eye on the chat as well. But we will, Jason Packard and I will also be watching the chat. So if you have a question, feel free to throw it in. Try to stay muted otherwise, just because we got a pretty good sized crowd that's continuing to grow. And Mai, I'll go back to watching the screen, watching the waiting room. Don't worry about that. You're additionally on your plate. And we'll kind of go from there. So Mai Alowaish is a lead analytics consultant at Infotrust, specializing in implementing complex analytics configurations for websites and mobile apps. She has over a decade of experience in working with digital analytics and e-commerce applications, and has done several cross-device analytics implementations for international retailers and service companies. She's actually based in Cleveland, holds a master's degree from Northwestern University in information systems, with an emphasis on internet and database systems. And it was literally June last year that she first spoke at Columbus Web Analytics Wednesday, and might have worked for a different company at that point, but made the jump to Infotrust pretty shortly thereafter. So with that, I am going to stop sharing, and Mai, you should be able to take it away.
Okay, well, thank you, Tim. And thank you for doing the introduction. Now I don't have to do it, so I'm going to skip over that slide. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Columbus Web Analytics Wednesday. I'm excited to be back here. Always a great crowd, always great content. So I know we have a big crowd, so I'm going to try to watch the questions and answer as I go. But if, we have the Q&A session in the end, and, some time for breakouts to even discuss some things. So we'll try to, I don't know if you hear the horns outside, but, quarantine. So let me share my screen and let me know if you see it. All good? Cool. Okay. So let me skip over this. So yeah, today we're going to talk about Google Analytics App+Web. When I was here last year, we talked about app analytics, and that was kind of general app analytics, a lot of tools. But Google released the App+Web in July 2019. So this is, still new. A lot of people are learning it. Our client is continuously asking about it. So it's a very hot topic now, and it's a great tool, kind of the future of GA. So I would love to walk you through it and show some examples of the interface of the data. So I'm excited to be back to talk more about app. Thank you, Tim, for doing the introduction. I'm going to skip over that and just go to talk a little bit about Infotrust. We are a consulting agency, analytics consulting. We do data governance. We're a technology company. We have several Google partner certifications. We're a Google Marketing Platform partner, cloud partner. We don't just do analytics, we do much more. We have our tag inspector, which is our proprietary product for tag governance. We focus on different industries. We have the CPG and multi-brand, retail and e-commerce, where I specialize, media and publishing, and we have a lot of other industries and great clients that we work with. The agenda for today is, first we're going to meet Google Analytics App+Web, talk about the new event model that Google App+Web works with. We're going to kind of compare it to Universal Analytics or GA. And then we're going to talk about advantages and challenges with having the event-based model. And then talk about getting started, where to start, how do you set up, and kind of just look through over some reports. So what is App+Web? I'm going to go into kind of an overview of how Google Analytics evolved. So we all started with Universal Analytics, and probably, I can go back to classic GA and Urchin all the way back, but I'm just going to start, 5 years back or something, where Universal Analytics was, the main way to track both apps and web. And if you're tracking a website, you will use page views and everything else. If you're tracking an app, it's screen views and everything else. What happened is Google Analytics decided to kind of sunset or deprecate the app using Universal Analytics. Well, you can't use it directly. You can still send data to it, but you can't use it directly on your app. It introduced firebase analytics. With firebase analytics, you're still tracking analytics, but you're not using screen views, you're using events and parameters. So it uses that event-based model here. And that was kind of the introduction of event-based model into Google Analytics platforms. And the only way you would be able to send data from apps into Universal Analytics is you use Tag Manager on top of Firebase. And now, just like I said, July of 2019, Google introduced the App+Web. So you have both app and web, and both of them use the event parameter. So it's letting go of that session model and everything around, you're revolving on sessions and hits, versus now everything is an event, and you have event parameters. So what is Google Analytics App+Web? It was released in July 2019. It is still in beta. So there are some major functionalities that are still missing. The way Google is evolving is amazing. We see updates and new features every day. Like 2 days before, I was extracting some screenshots from the interface. And this morning I looked and I'm like, oh my God, they added something. So I had to update them again. So things are changing every single day. And we expect to see more coming up with App+Web. It has free and unlimited event reporting. So now we don't have a premium or 360 or corporate version yet, but that is coming for sure. Currently, there is no limits on reporting like you have with the free Google Analytics. With App+Web, it uses the Firebase model, and you can have unlimited reporting on the events. It adopts the Firebase event-based model, and I'll walk through that in a minute. It uses the concept of data streams. So because it's App+Web, so you can bring a stream from apps, a stream from web, and you can bring them all together into one place. The event is, everything that comes from any platform is called a stream. For example, like if I have my iOS app, my Android app, and I have 3 websites, I define them all as streams into my interface. And you just see like I can have iOS, Android, or web, and I just define them and they become all different streams. The data all comes into that App+Web single account. And the way when you set up a stream, whether if it's an app stream, you would just use Firebase to track into it. If it's a web stream, it's just like any other Google Analytics where you set it up, you get a measurement ID or a stream and a stream ID. And the way you track it, you can use the G tag or just Google Tag Manager. And that's kind of, just like you track Universal Analytics, you're tracking the new version of Google App+Web. Let me go to see here. Yeah, so with the App+Web currently, it supports website, like I said, through GTAG, GTM. And the only difference from Universal Analytics is it uses a new measurement model. So the whole measurement model that we now build and use for GA, it changed because it's not using those hits, it's using those events and event parameters and also user properties. For native apps, you use the Firebase SDK to send data into App+Web. If you have hybrid apps, you could use the Firebase Web Views. For IoT devices, there isn't major integrations that I've seen yet. What we had for some of our clients who are very excited to use this, and like some OTT applications where we just defined them as a web stream, and then we just kind of use the measurement protocol to send data like a website, but we defined it as, whatever application it is. So there are ways around if, it's not supported yet or there's no SDK for it yet, to just send it like a normal stream. And just because I mentioned Firebase a lot here, so I'm going to take one step back and talk about what is Firebase Analytics. So Firebase Analytics, it's a part of Firebase. Firebase is an app development framework. And it was actually Google acquired it, I can't remember, 5-6 years ago or more. So Google acquired it, and it was an app development framework, and they added the analytics in it to be supported for apps. And then that model that previously was just for Firebase Analytics and for apps now feeds data into GA App+Web. So previously it was known as Google Analytics for Firebase or GA for F, but now it's App+Web. The event-based model, this is where it started and kind of got introduced into Google Analytics. The Firebase supports native apps and hybrid apps using web views, or you have the SDK, you have iOS, Android, Unity, and there's some more as well. So why would a client use App+Web? One of the main things that I hear from all our clients, they always want to merge data together. So the full story of their clients is really in both web and apps. There is that definition of micro moments where, customers look into their mobile and look for something, and then they go into their website and look for something or do the purchase. So your users are everywhere, and you want to make sure that you look at them cross-device. And then the other thing about the model here is the unified data model across devices. You're able to, cross that data together in no time. Previously, when we do roll-ups, we always go crazy trying to match up things from App+Web, or really lose a lot of data trying to make things go together. Versus here, it is built in where you're just tracking data the same way because both the app and web use the same data model. You have cross-device insights because that model, you're not really trying to find commonalities and lose a lot of things in this transition. You're really designing and sending the data and that to enable cross-device insight. The cool stuff about App+Web, it saves you a lot of time for tagging. There is the automated tagging. So for a website, this is for the web streams, scrolling, outbound clicks, site search, engagement, even file downloads, things that we use to write custom code or GTM tags for. All you have to do now is just toggle them and they're automatically tracked on your website. You don't need to do anything with it. There is also the automatically collected events. So for apps, they have a list of automatically collected events, and the same thing for web. So a lot of the stuff, they kind of just do it for you, makes it easy, and you're ready to go, and you're just adding your customization on top of those automated tracking. There's a flexible event measurement, and the nice thing is, you can define your custom events. And we got used to having the, if you're tracking in GA, there is the event category action label, and we're so limited with these. We're trying to fit everything around them. Versus here, you track events and to track interactions, to track user behavior. And this is kind of flexible because you don't have to send the same exact parameters every time. It kind of follows that big data model or semi-structured data model where you can send different event parameters based on where the event happening, whether it's web or app. The reporting for this is kind of user-centric reporting. So you're always looking at the user and what they do. And you track what they do around events and event parameters. I'll share an example here of kind of the event-based model and how it works. And this event-based model, it's not really specific to Google. And it's for the first time in a while where I see all, analytics platform using the same terminology. What I've seen this in, I see it in Google, I see it in other places like Mixpanel, Amplitude, where everything is called events and user properties. Probably the only difference was Mixpanel calling them profile properties instead of user properties, but they're technically the same thing. So you have the user, and then there's properties of the user, which is kind of attributes of the user to slice and dice your customer and segment them. And then the concept of a session, you see that dotted line here, that, concept of a session is not that major thing that we report on. What we try to really report on is those things which are the events that are happening. So you have the same add to cart event here and here, but you're sending different parameters, and that's okay. That's a flexible event model. You have, standardized everything on the way in. Everything is an event and parameters, and then allows you to quickly get insights on the behavior of the user. Comparing Universal Analytics to App+Web, kind of before and after of Google Analytics, we're used to seeing those things when we're tracking Universal Analytics of page view, screen view, transaction, event, and so on. Versus in App+Web, everything is an event. Even a page view is considered an event just like any other event. The hit attributes before, where you had defined hit attributes. If you're sending a page view, then this is the event. If you're sending an event, then you have to use category, action, label, and all of that stuff. That is going away. You have event parameters. And currently, they have a limit of 25 parameters per event. And in your overall project setup, you're limited to 100 event parameters. They have a 100 character length as well, limitation. I'm guessing that when we have a 360 version or a corporate version of GA, that these limits will be increased for corporate users. We're used to custom dimensions and metrics. These are also going away. You are again back to event parameters. So when you track an event, you send everything that you want to track with it. There is the user session scope, which are things that we usually track when user logs in, or just like kind of a user level. This is where you see the user properties, where we looked at them here. They kind of stay on top and kind of stay on the user level rather on the event level. And these kind of tracked across all, across the sessions. We had Google, goal funnels and e-commerce. These are called now conversion events. There are some built-in conversion events like the e-commerce purchase, like in-app purchase, I think the first open. And any custom event that you add, you can mark it as a conversion event. Once you mark an event in App+Web as a conversion event, then it would be calculated towards conversion rates, session quality, to kind of does that kind of machine learning things that, okay, this is a great visit, it has a lot of conversion, this is, for attribution and all of that stuff. Other things that haven't changed much is, demographics, technology. These are the same things as long as you have the codes that enable it. They send the same thing. UTMs are still there. I have kind of links here to Firebase collection and configuration limits. It just, for references that, the list of parameters and limits on each. I'm going to peek. Is there any questions, Tim? Because suddenly that chat is gone.
Yeah, Rachel actually asked if there will be more coverage of the video recording feature.
The video recording?
I'm thinking, don't they have like the pre?
Okay. So the video, so it tracks as an event, as a video play. I don't have a specific example of it. But so what it does is, let me go back to where, I think this is what you mentioned, the video engagement.
I suspect that's what you meant.
Yes. So probably like, just like now, if you want to track a video, a YouTube video on your website, you got to have to all these kind of, you either do it through Google Tag Manager, where they recently added this tag where you embed and you can track Google, the video interactions. But now if you have a YouTube video embedded in your website, all you have to do is toggle this on, and then it tracks kind of the play, the progress, or video completed, and all of those, you'll see them as events automatically in your App+Web interface. And it's, of course, it's specific to YouTube because we're in Google, but you know, you can always do your custom tracking, because if you use GTM, you can do anything else.
There's actually a separate question, which is, do we have documentation on how to implement Firebase in Angular 9?
Not to my knowledge, not to my, and I can name like few other interfaces that we're waiting for them to come up with documentation. Like on GitHub, you see a lot of people asking for these, even like Unity, which Google Analytics or Firebase, it has the Firebase SDK for Unity, for example, but the GTM library was never available and still not. So it's available for like iOS, Android, and Unity, which they have a full documentation on, but that specific library is not available. So some of those libraries are not available. You can either like +1 for Google to, you know, request it, or sometimes people on GitHub do this and update it. Cool. Love those questions. Let me go back.
Well, yeah, I don't know. You want one more? This is actually this is gonna be the, so events just sound like another word for hits. So what's the difference between them?
So, you know, it is, you can call them hits if you'd like. And the difference with hits, previously when we had hits, we had a hit type that we sent. So that hit type would be either a transaction or a page view or a screen view. And based on that hit type, you had certain parameters that you set. So that was kind of the limitation with hits or hit types. I mean, you can call the events hit, but with the events now, you can send your own parameters and you can kind of design your own event or design your own hit, I would call it. So you can design your own hit without being kind of limited. It's kind of the, you know, the BI model where you kind of have your database and you have to design your fields for database and you build your database, versus the semi-structured data model where you just send data and you know, you keep sending more fields as you go.
So they're being they're both, in both cases, they're collecting stuff as a hit is collecting it. But with this, instead of saying, well, your custom dimensions and metrics are a payload on top of a event or a page view or a transaction, that's kind of gone away, right?
And I'm gonna like, this is a page that's loaded. It is technically a hit, so it is technically a hit. So this is a blog post that I have, so a website where I have both the Universal Analytics and App+Web. So you see all the hits here with the CV, you know, collect question mark, these are the Google Analytics hit. If CV = 1, which is the version 1 of measurement model, this is the Google Analytics hit for what we had before. And that hit where you have that T, which is, oh, this is an event. Or if I have another one, probably like a page view. So T is a page view. So this is where I have a hit and that. Now, let me find one that's actually the new, this one. So here, this is a version 2, which is App+Web hit. So that hit is an App+Web. And if you look here, you don't have that T parameter because we know it's an App+Web hit. You just have the event name. So that event name is a scroll. And then I can see here, event parameter is like blog Infotrust, and event parameter name is like % scrolled and 90 and so on. So you see all of this stuff that it's technically a hit, but it's just the format of the parameters or the data sent through that hit is different and is more flexible.
There's another question, but I think you might get to it in your advantages and disadvantages. So I'm going to hold on whether we ask it yet or not.
Okay, let's do that. Let me, just because I took that out, it just reset my notes. So let me go back here. Okay, so advantages and, the advantages here, I kind of go higher up and not just specific to App+Web. I talk about the event-based model because it kind of, things are changing with App+Web a lot that I cannot just name specific advantages or disadvantages. With the event-based model, you can easily incorporate like new products, new experiences, And like I said, it's flexible, but it kind of focuses on that single identity model that I have this user and I'm tracking everything around him. We're always tracking things around the user. We're being very user-centric. So that kind of gives you good information about your customers and be able to work with them and target them in different ways. I like this quote by IBM where they said, when they had that unified tracking model, they allowed us to convert these events into behaviors and then tie those behaviors into individuals using that single identity model. So their data across web, mobile, email, social, or other channels, they're not siloed anymore between different platforms, different channels. They were able to kind of draw that customer journey because everything is coming into one and with a single kind of unified tracking model. And that's kind of one of the main advantages of Google switching into an event-based model. Another advantage is that you can easily add additional tracking. So as we saw in that example that I had where I had add to cart, using different parameters, that's a nice thing. Now, if you add new product details, if you add new functionalities, you can just keep on adding event parameters, change that model without having to redesign things or change things. There's behavioral data and prediction for purchases, upgrades, and churn. So we marketers always aim to know the customers. We want to build a relationship with the customers and know their behaviors or personas. Now, having demographics, psychographics will not help you kind of predict the customer next action. The behavioral and the events or the actions that they take on your website will be, is much better for understanding their behavior and predicting things like purchases, upgrades, churn. So what the customers do and act on your website paints a much better picture of their next action of who they are. And lastly, that, we're simplifying the data collection with that. So when we have all the data coming together in that event-based model, we're not really doing any data merging before we get insights cross device. It's really instant because everything is coming together into one platform. So with that, event-based model, when they simplify that data collection, it enables us as marketers to do analysis in a very timely manner. So we can do like predictive analysis, machine learning, unified customer, from different channels. We can quickly go to the actionable insights, in no time because we really don't have to do any ETLs or moving data around. A good example of this is, being able to answer before they ask. So like if I'm on Netflix and with them here, I'm logged in and I'm looking at my Netflix on TV. And then usually before, if I want to merge the insights from my OTT application or the TV versus what I do on my device and what I'm logged in on my laptop, usually it takes a while to get those insights and then I can retarget that customer after I do that data merge. But now things are coming all together into a single model quickly. Once they do something on the TV, it's instantly in analytics. You can instantly act on it. So for example, I can be on the TV skipping the same show. So when I do a lot of skip video events, on the TV, the next time I grab my phone to look, they can probably offer me another, TV show because they know instantly that I just skipped a lot on the device. So we're seeing kind of the seamless cross-device coming through all devices. So I see some behavior on one device, I can offer them something when they pick up their phone or open their laptop. So it's, you can do that viewing suggestion without having to do any data merges or things in between. So the key here is kind of, to understand your customers across all of these channels, across all of these devices, and show them what they want at each moment. And App+Web is really great at that, or the event-based model is really great because it helps you bring the data together much faster. Now the disadvantages, or challenges I would call them, is, with event-based models, we try to look at customers here across all, channels, across all devices, and the path that they take to conversion. So some businesses are positioned for success with this, which is, using the user-centric model because they already have a customer profile and the user logs in to every individual device. Like e-commerce websites are basically set for this. They already have a unique identifier for the user. They know you in all of your devices, and they can get a well-rounded picture of you as a user. Like we saw in like Netflix, or even like in my Amazon app, I'm always logged in on my phone, on my laptop, and like on Fire Stick. I'm logged in everywhere, they know me. But other businesses, however, such as news or media outlets, do not have that advantage. Most of their audience kind of remains anonymous for the entire time that they interact with their websites or with their apps. If you're checking the latest news on your phone, or if you're watching the news on TV, or searching some videos on Apple TV, you don't have to log in. They don't know your profile. And these businesses historically, they really depended on DMPs, data management platforms. So let me hear. So they, with the DMPs, now we have ITP, ETP, all of these restrictions that kind of, crippled them, that they're not able to collect all of these cookies and be able to tie the users across different platforms. And as a result of these new regulations, they now only have the option of first-party data, or data they directly, own about their audience. So a lot of them, they kind of had to become creative to have users create profile, where they show you some content. If you want to see more content, please sign up or log in. Some big publishers, they have the ability to do that, but smaller businesses or other, TV stations may not have the ability to do that. This dilemma kind of resulted in other solutions. So, like I said, either first-party data, so you want to incentivize the user to sign up, or other tools like Google Signals, for example, which Google Signals kind of looks at you. If you're logged in your Google profile across different devices, they can see you and they can let you know that these users do this across devices. You won't be able to tell who he is exactly, like his Google account, but you are able to see cross-device insight with Google Signals. Now, Google Signals is a solution for this, but it's not in App+Web yet, but I'm sure it's coming up soon because it's widely available in the Universal Analytics. And did that answer that question, Tim?
I think maybe not. So, because we kind of had two different flavors of a similar question, in that Luciano asked, if I don't have an app but only have a website, would I still want to migrate from Universal Analytics to a Web Plus app? So the kind of the advantages of the event-based model, I think, might have partially answered that. And then Christy, we got some Sydney representation going on here. That she asked, if you were starting completely from scratch, would you actually recommend going with App+Web? Which I think to me gets to that broader question of rolled out in July 2019, still in beta, but Google Analytics was in beta for like 7 years or something, right? So like, is it really ready to go if that was your only, like you're running, and actually just so you know, Merrick chimed in and said, well, you ought to run both, like you just showed, like, so where does that fall?
Yeah, I mean, so for the first question, if it's purely web, that's still applicable here because you're using that event-based model, like Tim said. You have unlimited data collection versus like if you use the free Google, you don't. There are other things that you'll see, and when we walk through the reporting, that are not in GA, but they're here. If you're starting from scratch, it depends on like your requirements. Like e-commerce is not available yet. Reporting, like enhanced e-commerce reporting, which everybody uses in Universal Analytics, is not available yet. I'm suspecting it's going to be very soon because they just like 2 weeks ago, they released the actual scripts and measurement tags for the enhanced e-commerce. So it's probably going to be out there soon, but if e-commerce is a priority for you, probably not ready for App+Web yet. So it depends on the features that you're looking for. If your features were good with App+Web, then why play catch up? Just start with it. If you need features that are not available, what we recommend for a lot of our clients, they do double tagging. So they use the App+Web tags, but they kind of, some of them, if you use certain events, some of them you can use Google Tag Manager to use the same event to pass into both Universal Analytics and App+Web. And that's what I had like in the website that I was just showing you, the blog post. We're using the same GTM and we're pushing data in parallel to Universal and App+Web. And probably in a few years, we'll drop one and keep the other.
Well, so that is like when I feel like we're going from the legacy to Universal Analytics, there were all these cases where it was still the same measurement protocol, basically. So that you'd run into like the dual tagging, and it was like, this would create a absolute hot mess. But it sounds like because these are literally two different measurement protocols, there's no risk. I mean, you can deploy them through the same GTM container and figure it out. But it sounds like if you're thinking, if you have one, so it doesn't get to Christy's question of where should I, because I could see if you're literally starting from scratch, you'd say, I'm going to go App+Web. You could be 80% in and say, oh, there's something not here yet, which would be rough. Because I remember hearing in January, like e-commerce isn't here yet. And I wasn't sure if it was there now or not.
Not yet.
So, but it sounds like if running them in parallel, if you've got the one, say, well, try it. Like, can you recreate everything that you need? Because you don't list here as a challenge just the mindset shift to the user-centric and event-based paradigm. Like, I know it's got some stuff kind of out of the box, but are you seeing that as a challenge to actually kind of define a custom event schema that actually kind of holds up?
So sometimes I see it as an advantage that we're really going user-centric, which is, all analytics platform, I've seen them go into that user-centric. And for the longest time, Universal Analytics tried to do that. Like I had this article on Google blog saying probably with like 2018, saying user-centric reporting on Universal Analytics. So they've been trying to go user-centric, but I think this is what made the big shift. Is really letting go of those sessions and everything and centering even the behavior around the user-centric. So if you are like very stuck in that Universal Analytics, it may be a challenge to do that mind, shift. Versus if you're looking at as a tool, it would be an advantage to shift to that and use it, because it gives you that personas of the user. It gives you those actionable insights that you can just do. You're not really tied to sessions. There are stuff, back to Christy's question, there are stuff which is good stuff that's already kind of implemented. If we look at like some advertising. So again, we look at the stuff which matters to you. If those integrations are available, like some of our clients, they wanted App+Web specifically because they wanted to merge cross-device insight without, they never liked the way Google rolled up mobile views and website views. So they didn't care. They have Universal Analytics running on website, but they didn't care. They said, okay, we just want to do the App+Web because we really want rolled up insights now. And they didn't have e-commerce. They're a new station. So this worked for them. Other clients were like, yeah, we'll double tag just so we could get to see the events, get used to it. But we are an e-commerce business, and Universal Analytics is our source of truth now.
So on the user-centric side, Adam had a question about, can you speak to more like how that transition from the anonymous user to an identified user, like when you've got kind of the anonymous client ID, and then you've got the separate user ID, is it that same idea, or is it kind of a shift?
It is the same idea, yeah. So you have the user ID, which you would track, just like now in Google Analytics, where you can set that user ID, and then you get the cross-user device. The same thing with App+Web. You can set that user ID, and that's your own user identifier. And then there is that GA client ID is already also available there. The only tricky thing here is when you're going different devices, if you're doing like native apps and website, that client ID won't be the same. Because you're using different devices. So that user ID becomes very important to tie those sessions. We've done where, within Firebase, I believe it's called the instance ID, which is kind of the unique installation of the app on that device. It has an ID, versus you have the GA client ID there. Okay, no more questions? You're on mute, Tim.
We do have more questions, but I'm thinking maybe we run through the content, and then since we've got the breakout set so people can ask them, we'll keep an eye on them. But so
sounds good. Okay, so just getting started on like data flow, looking at kind of a sample strategy and walkthrough of the reporting, because I know people love to look at reports. So this is kind of the architecture if you're looking at an App+Web installation. You have your website. Of course, you have always your website can go here into Universal Analytics, but we're not talking about that now. We're talking about this guy, Google Analytics for Firebase or App+Web, where you have the data streams. So your websites can use the G tag or Google Tag Manager to come in here directly. Your applications use Firebase to, you can use the automatic or custom events to come into App+Web. If your applications want to still go to Universal Analytics for some reason, you're still rolling up, you're still looking at e-commerce or anything, then you just enable the GTM library on top of Firebase. So that's the only way you could go into Universal Analytics from apps right now. Google Analytics does not, or App+Web still is not available in Data Studio as a data source. So you have to go through BigQuery. And that kind of just, you enable the link to BigQuery, it moves all the data, and then you can pull it in Data Studio. I know it's coming very soon that we're going to have it direct here into Data Studio without having to go through that in between. An example of, like, we're tracking this. If I'm a travel website and the event here is I'm searching for these hotels, and I have the price range, star range, property types, and then I click search and I get these results. The way I would just try to look at it is here, we try the event, which is, on search, we push this event. So we're looking at an event, and that event is hotel search. And then we have all these parameters with this event. Now, app event, maybe in your app, you don't have enough real estate to show the star rating. So you're just sending these parameters. And on your web, you have more, search criteria. So you can have more parameters here. These both will show in the same report. So, although you're not tracking the same parameters, when you look in your report, you'll see the same number of event hotel searches and be able to report on it. Things that are user property, maybe you track your membership type, certain things about the platform that you can use to track as user level, what we used to know as custom dimensions for users. Now we think of them as user properties that are specific to the device or to the user itself. Other triggers, probably like someone saves the hotel, shares the hotel, and then you would go the same thing. You would see the actions. So we really try to think of the actions and think about every action. What can I measure? What's going to give me actionable data around that action, and define those as parameters. So once you track these and you put the strategy, you implement the tracking, then you're ready to actually report on it. Now, we have in reporting in App+Web specifically, we have less standard reporting, and this is kind of not the Google way of giving you all these pre-built reports, easy to look at. They're giving you the power now to actually do and build your own reports. And that's kind of part of the event data modeling, because it tracks the user action, but you add the meaning to those collected information through your analysis. That add to cart event could be an indication of a customer interest in a certain product when you're studying interest and segmenting users. But that same add to cart event could be, the first step in a purchase funnel. So one event could be used in different ways, could mean different things. It depends on when you analyze the data, you give a value. So you give the value through analysis. The other thing about reporting or, looking at your reports, there are no filters in the views. All the filters happens on the reports. So once you send data into an App+Web property, you can't just filter a certain domain out or anything. All the filtering happens when you're building the reports. So it contains this tons of raw data coming from all your streams. When you start building your reports, this is when you slice and dice and segment the data. So even when you go into the Google Analytics interface, and I'll show this in a minute, where you just see the account property, there's no such thing as views, it's just blank. There is free unlimited reporting, as I mentioned. The e-commerce is not yet available. This is kind of a sample of the standard reporting that we see.
Actually, there was can you go back one? I think there was a question that might be a quick.
Yeah.
So if there aren't kind of the views in this, how does user access, kind of user access work? Like, in where you could assign.
The property.
Yeah, properties versus views.
So when you click on a property, you're literally seeing the view. And I'll show one just as we're done with this. So this is here, I'm looking at the property. And then you start, once you click on the property, because there's no view to click on. Once you click on the property, you're here logged into the regular reporting. You're seeing user demographics, behavior, technology, kind of similar menus, but different than what we're used to. Like the acquisition, for example, that we used to, like channels and so on. They're not there anymore. You go into users and then you find the channels. Here I'm looking at like countries, where I'm looking at demographics and things like that. Let me do the next one here. So if I'm looking at, this is what I said, like under users, we can see organic search. So kind of similar what we used to in GA. Engaged session is a bit different, but we look at like here, it's events per session instead of like page views or and there's like conversions usually as well. There is, if you want to add the second dimension, this is how it is. So it's very similar. We're looking at this report for demographics. I can add the second dimension of city, country, and all that other stuff that automatically tracks. Does that answer that question, I think?
I think so. You're just, you're controlling, you don't have quite as many levels, but you can, when it comes to assigning a user access to it, you're assigning it to the property. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And then there is, so with that kind of limited standard reporting, this is where kind of they have an analysis hub where they give you kind of more of the custom reporting that you build, all of these reports that you can build your own analysis and look at it. So there are these 6 types of reports from expiration, segment overlap, and I'm gonna, some of this stuff is similar to what we've seen in Universal Analytics, and some of the stuff are just, new in App+Web. So the first one is exploration. This is kind of built for ad hoc analysis, and you have multiple tabs to visualize, and it's fairly intuitive, add segment, add dimension and metrics, and you get your report. One of the kind of new and killer features here is the anomaly detection. So you see here where it's, you can, Google uses statistical analysis to identify outliers and the ability to adjust that for a training period or sensitivity. So it's kind of cool, and we didn't have that in Universal. The other type is the segment overlap technique. It hasn't changed much, honestly, from Universal Analytics. It's just more powerful now because you're looking quickly as cross-device. Another one is the funnel analysis. So the funnel analysis, again, it's similar to what we had in UA, but you have more funnel steps. So now you can define up to 10 funnel steps here. There is also the path analysis, which is kind of was one of the anticipated reporting features, was to analyze the path, and you can now define specific customer touch points and see what pages or events your customer complete in that single point. There are 3 different dimension or nodes for reporting: the event name, the page title, screen class, or screen name. One more is the user explorer, which is kind of, I was wishing for this because it took me forever sometimes when I wanted to look into a specific user, kind of find that report. When I look into it, create a segment and I see all these users, then I have to take that user ID and go to the user explorer, look at him. Here, once you create the report, this being a user ID or a device ID, you click here directly, and once you click, you see all of the details about the user and the activity and everything they've done, from events to like first time and all the details. So it saves you a ton of time when you're trying to look into certain paths and certain users of segments. This is kind of the 6th and last one, which is the cohort analysis. It's kind of robust with the ability to adjust cohort inclusion, return criteria, and kind of being very granular with the reporting. The flexibility to be more specific about your cohort will kind of lead you to richer analysis. And while the cohort is available in Universal Analytics, here where it became richer and kind of more, give you more power over the cohorts. So as a summary, these reports provide the analysts with plenty of ways to add value to the data collected. As I said, one event may be a step of the funnel, and at the same time, it can be used to define a cohort here. And just because of this new collection of analysis options, the analyst is empowered to uncover insights and be able to apply business logic to, in a different way. So as you start to collect, and I don't know if you hear the rain, it started raining here. As you start to collect data and kind of with those automatic events, you'll get an understanding of how this new App+Web collection model compares to traditional universal analytics. Sometimes I like to look at them side by side. And I have to admit, like at the beginning, I hated that I had to create certain reports or the way that things are different. But that's just, user resistance. And now I found myself this morning, I was trying to look at some data for one of our clients. And I just love using the quick insights here. But I quickly created a segment and quickly applied it to other things and got my insights much faster than I would in Universal. But despite all the hype, App+Web is still in beta. As we said, it's still missing some functionality and some reporting capabilities. But like I said, it's been evolving so fast. So I'm sure we'll see more stuff, coming soon, and a fully baked solution that will kind of close the gap between App+Web and provide you great visibility into your customer journey. And with that, I say happy analyzing and get more questions.
So I'm going to say we're going to ask one question. There are more that were asked, and then we'll talk about, just in the interest of time, we'll kind of talk about how people can hang out and ask them. But a couple of people pointed out, and I realized I might have missed it as well, the old with Google, Universal Analytics, where Google kind of defines the session. Where does it come to, like, defining what a session is? How does that work in App+Web? Is that configurable or?
I mean, the same thing. So once you start sending hits, it will automatically send a session start. You would see this sometimes, like if I would show it in my analytics.
I think I saw a session start in when you were doing the user explorer. But what determines when a session ends? Like, is it the same?
I believe the same way. You have like a certain time for that session to end, just like GA.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's not, it's not adding the ability to define, because I thought that was one of the challenges with mobile app, with mobile apps specifically. 30 minutes is like insane.
Oh yeah. So with mobile apps specifically for that, they have, so if I go back to that screen where I had the engaged sessions. So when you look at any reports in Google Analytics or App+Web, you'll see some metric called the engaged session. So what it does, it automatically sends this event in the app called session engagement. So these session engagement events are automatically sent, and to make sure that the user is in the app and he's engaged doing something. So it uses a different algorithm, and that's why like bounce rate is gone. We're not really looking at bounce rate, we're really looking at engaged session, and it has a whole different calculation. I know one of our team members has a great blog post about this, where he talks about the reporting, and you'll probably find it in our blogs, probably maybe tomorrow, I think it will be published. Where he talks about how App+Web let go of that bounce rate and now really looking at those session engagement to solve that problem for apps. And this is where I was saying, like, you have the account, you have the property, but there's nothing there.
Yeah, right.
That's the App+Web.
So, and I'll also say, Merrick, who I think it has got to be insanely late for him, has actually been answering some of the questions in the chat. So there's also been, there's been some shadow support in the chat. But now here's like and I'm not one to talk, but I will say, who can find the reactions button and give May a round of applause through the participants window? Anyone? Look at that. Look at those. It's almost like the roaring applause. There you go.
Nice. Thank you, guys.
So